Well, welcome to another edition of Ottawa Exposed with David Krayden. I'm David Krayden. I'm the senior parliamentary correspondent for the Western Standard, and I'm here today to tell you what's really happening in Ottawa. There's always something going on. I hope you guys all had a safe and happy New Year's Eve. It was so boring at our house that my cat called the SPCA. But seriously, we're into a very interesting year politically, and I want you all to be here every week to understand what's going on here in Ottawa. I'll do my best because my job is to tell you the truth, and that's what you're going to get from this correspondent. And there's a lot of things to discuss today, but I want to start off by saying this is my fourth broadcast, and the first three have just gone through the roof. And I want to thank you for your support. I don't think we've seen numbers like this at the Western Standard so far. And it's wonderful to be part of this experience. And I'm thanking you all for tuning in again today, for listening to what I have to say, because I've been doing this for quite a few years. And I've never had so much fun as I'm having right now, writing daily and broadcasting every week about what's going on. And I want to thank the Western Standard for the opportunity and the audience to talk to, because we are dealing with some very exciting times. I want to lead off with my last column of actually 2022. It was part of the end of the year review, and I want to compliment our Opinion Page's editor, Nigel Hannaford, for rolling out all of the end of the year columns from all of our columnists in such a fantastic way. There was never a dull moment. There was never a day without something really interesting to read about. And what did I choose to do my end of the year column about? Well, guess what? George Orwell, and why George Orwell continues to be so relevant to people today. He is so relevant because he wasn't necessarily aligned with any political party. He voted for the Labour Party in his lifetime. He wasn't particularly pledged to any particular philosophy, although he called himself a socialist. What he really was dedicated to was the truth. And if that truth got in the way of his preconceived notions of the ideology of the moment, of what was popular at the moment, it didn't matter to George Orwell. He spoke the truth. He wrote the truth. He went to Spain to fight in the Spanish Civil War. He certainly wasn't there to fight for the fascists, but he wasn't going to fight for Stalinist Russia either. So he chose a third team to fight for. And he really stood up for the truth throughout his lifetime. And I thought it was a very apropos to finish off 2022 by talking about Orwell, because we are living in Orwellian times. I say it all the time in my columns. I probably say it too much, and I probably should say it less. But George Orwell, of course, was not just the author of 1984, and that's probably how most people remember Orwell. That's probably how they're first introduced to Orwell. That was his best-selling book, his most popular book, and unfortunately the last book he ever wrote. He was only 46 years when he died. And in 1984, he called it that because he started writing it in 1948 and he just reversed the numbers. But it describes, of course, a very dystopic society in the future where the state controls not only how we speak and how we write, but how we think. It's not good enough for the state to control your speech. They want to control your thought. And that's where we're going in Trudeau's Canada. That's where we're going, because he wants to censor the internet to the point where we can't say what we want to say. And everything that he deems to be inappropriate, he's going to call hate speech, or he's going to call misinformation. These are deadly terms. These are toxic terms, because they can mean literally anything the state, the Trudeau government, deems them to mean. So if he thinks my speech, my writing is hateful because I'm critical of his policies, he can say it's hate speech. If he doesn't agree with my opinion on something, he can say that's misinformation. We're going to banish it from the internet. That's not acceptable, folks. And the Liberal government is going through with bills to do this, suppress this. And I thought it was time to remember that Orwell was already there before us. He was already there before us. And Orwell said in 1984, very interesting line, because doesn't this remind you of where we are today? Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And have you noticed how the Trudeau government's constantly trying to reinvent the past? Always apologizing for things that happened in the past. Because if they can control the past and the present, they will control the future. And they control it through speech. They control it through the way we communicate. And right now, the way most Canadians are getting their news and are communicating with others, unofficially and officially, is through the internet. And we've learned lately how Twitter was controlled by officials in the U.S. government, by the FBI, by the Justice Department. We know social media is tainted with control. And we know Trudeau wants to control that internet in Canada. And this is a very, very dangerous thing. So we need to remember that Orwell told us how some, in Animal Farm, how some animals are more equal than others. That's the society that Justin Trudeau envisions, where some animals, some people are more equal than others. The elites are more equal than the masses. That's why he hates populism so much, because it empowers people to stand up and say, I will not be suppressed. That's why he hated the Freedom Convoy so much, because people stood up and say, we will not be forced to do something against our will and to lose our job because we made that decision. That's why Trudeau hated that so much. But I want to move on to one of my favorite columns of the week. And I think it was apropos because it was about Justin Trudeau's New Year's Day statement to Canadians. Now, if you go through Justin Trudeau's statements over the years he's been prime minister, they're often innocuous, anodyne, sometimes incomprehensible. He wrote at once about Christmas, and it was difficult to decide whether he was talking about Christmas or a non-Christian holiday. He has that tendency. But his New Year's message this year was quite interesting because I thought it sounded like a man living, inhabiting another planet, or living or inhabiting an alternate universe that doesn't correspond with the one most Canadians are living on. And this is how he wrote. Quite interesting. He says, for instance, we have a lot to be thankful for in this past year. We got back to doing the things we love, like gathering with friends and family. As our economy reopened, we experienced one of the strongest economic recoveries in the G7, creating more jobs than we lost to the pandemic. I find that very hard to believe. You wander down your main street. How many of those restaurants are still closed or haven't reopened? We're just losing one of my favorite pubs in town. The Heart and Crown is closing. I just read yesterday. Couldn't make it through rolling lockdowns. And Trudeau's still threatening lockdown. So, my goodness, what a hypocrite. As we welcome the world back to Canada over the summer to share the natural beauty that we are all so proud of, Trudeau gushes. Forgetting that, of course, he was the one who shut down the economy. He was the one responsible for it. Now, Trudeau always has challenges. There's challenges in Trudeau's life. He doesn't like to describe anything in his life as anything but a challenge. So he says, this year also had challenges, but when things got hard, we were there for each other. I don't think Trudeau was there for each of us, was he? We rolled up our sleeves, looked out for our neighbors, and supported each other. Well, the only thing Trudeau rolled up his sleeve for was to get another jab of the COVID-19 shot, and he insisted we keep getting these vaccinations. And 2 wasn't enough. 3 wasn't enough. Now we should be getting them for the rest of our lives, according to Trudeau and his health minister. Trudeau did not roll up his arms for Canadians this year. When the Freedom Convoy rolled into town, he ignored them. He disappeared. And as we learned, what he likes to do on his spare time is binge watch television. He loves a series called The Boys, which is about a group of vigilantes looking out for corrupt superheroes. And if that sounds ridiculous to you, it does to me too. I haven't seen the show, But when you learn that Justin Trudeau's favorite material is science fiction and horror, his favorite author is Stephen King, for instance. His favorite movie is a science fiction movie. He seems to really live in another place than the rest of us. And I believe he does this in his personal life, and he also imposes this on his professional life. And this is why he doesn't seem to be living in the same space as the rest of us. And I love how he concludes his statement to Canadians. And remember, this is his New Year's Eve statement here. As we look ahead to the new year, the government of Canada will continue to build an economy that works for all Canadians. Really? We will keep attracting historic investments. And here's the kicker here. In our electric vehicle supply chain, from critical minerals to manufacturing, which are already securing tens of thousands of jobs across the country. And we will continue to be there for people by making life more affordable. Well, Justin Trudeau, you have not made life more affordable for Canadians. And I'd like to know exactly what you're talking about when you say electrical vehicle supply chain. Are you talking about batteries for electric cars? Because guess what? We're running out of batteries because we can't get enough of the materials and minerals to make them. And we're using child labor around the world to obtain those minerals and those materials. So I thought that was something Justin Trudeau wouldn't support. So we don't have enough batteries for these electric cars. And the very idea of an electric car is founded on fossil fuels. Did you ever think of that? Justin Trudeau, probably hasn't. He thinks when you plug this electric vehicle in, it's a magic source of power. What is it actually? Well, it's electricity, which is produced by coal-fired plants in many cases. Not magic. Fossil fuels create the power to generate electric cars. So there's a huge contradiction here. But what Trudeau, if Trudeau thinks he's going to make money off green energy, he missed one of the biggest opportunities in Canadian history last year when he turned down Germany's offer to buy Canadian liquid natural gas, LNG. He said there was no business case for it. Now he lost billions of dollars in sales, real sales, not these kind of ephemeral sales that are part of the green energy plan, which, by the way, China has already cornered the market on. They're already producing the windmills and the solar panels that are part of the green energy deal. So does Trudeau really think he's going to make commensurate money from batteries for electric cars? Where is his mind in all of this? Of course, it's fantasy because he's writing to us. He's speaking to us from an alternate universe. And that's something we always have to remember about Justin Trudeau. He's not living in the same place we are. He is living with elites. He has his entire life. He grew up as an elite in an elite family. His father was prime minister. He continues to live in the world of elites. And this is something we cannot ever forget. And this is why he hates populism so much, because it empowers people, real people who he doesn't really ever get to meet and has no desire to meet. Now, I wanted to cover my third column now, which is a very dangerous phenomenon. And we learned recently that during the negotiations that were going on during the Freedom Convoy and before Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, Trudeau's parliamentary secretary said that the government, that the cabinet had pissed away its credibility. His own words. Now, surely Justin Trudeau realized that he had pissed away his own credibility as well by lying, by stretching the truth, by not telling Canadians what's really happening. So the solution, instead of putting cabinet ministers and the prime minister in front of the microphone to explain the situation to Canadians, use the military. Use police officers. Use people in uniform to do it, to justify it, to parrot those talking points and to give substance and credibility to words that have no truth or validity. And I remember this happening when I was still in uniform, and the Chief of Defense Staff, General Maurice Barré, was forced to conduct a news conference to explain why then Prime Minister Jean Chrétien could not go to a funeral for the late King Hussein in Jordan. Now, Chrétien had his own personal reasons for not going. He made a choice not to go, but he was embarrassed politically by it. So he forced the military to concoct a fiction, a tale, that the military could not have flown him there in time. And they had the CDS at the time appear before the cameras and tell this grand lie. And of course, it was just Jean Chrétien's way of evading responsibility. Now, Justin Trudeau apparently is all for this. And look for more of this in 2023. You'll see fewer cabinet ministers up there telling stories, and you'll see more generals, and you'll see more police officers, and more public servants that people are supposed to trust issuing those government talking points. Now, this is very dangerous. And we have seen this already, and it's not healthy for a democracy. But very little of what Justin Trudeau is doing right now is healthy for a democracy. He is clearly working towards more self-aggrandizement, more authoritarian government. And believe me, this is something to be very concerned about. Something to be very concerned about, because Justin Trudeau is there for Justin Trudeau. Now, is there going to be an election in 2023? And the question is, can an ego-driven politician, a narcissistic politician like Justin Trudeau, actually accept the rejection of the electorate? Now, I believe there will be an election in 2023. I could be wrong. Justin Trudeau can change his mind. He has already indicated to his caucus that there's going to be an election in 2023. Get ready for it, he said. Be prepared. Now, it's true, any caucus of any cabinet should always be ready for an election. But when the Prime Minister indicates that they had better be ready, it's a good indication that he has got something planned. Now, why would Justin Trudeau want an election in 2023? Because he knows the latter half of that year, of this year, is probably going to be worse. We could be into a heavy recession by that time. We could be into stagflation in a very serious ways. Interest rates are going to continue to climb. And if you remember what happened with interest rates under his father, when they exceeded 20%, people lost homes, they lost livelihoods, they lost lives in some cases. Interest rates can decimate and destroy a society. And Trudeau knows those interest rates are going to continue to climb in 2023. Trudeau also suspects that the NDP vote has collapsed. Now, you might recall he's in an informal coalition with the NDP right now. He and Jagmeet Singh, the leader of the NDP, have an agreement of sorts. NDP is supporting the Liberal government. Trudeau thinks that's worked out on his behalf and that he has virtually captured the NDP vote. He probably looked at this recent by-election in Mississauga, where, by the way, only 25% of the electorate showed up. But he looked at that where the Liberal just exceeded 51% of the vote. And the NDP did not even get 5% of the vote in that by-election. Conservatives got over 35%. So it was really a two-way race, even though there were 5 parties participating. Now, Trudeau's looking at that and saying, the NDP vote has collapsed and it's gone to the Liberals. Certainly, this informal coalition has hurt the NDP politically. There's no question about that. But is all the NDP vote going to the Liberals? I don't believe so. I think there's an old-style blue-collar vote in the NDP that is sick and tired of socialism that doesn't work, and is sick and tired of the social re-engineering that the NDP is so fond of. So fond of pronouns. So fond of the transgender politics, where biological males are allowed to compete against females because they just say they feel like a woman. This is obviously nonsense, and it should not govern how sports are conducted in this country. And it's a slap in the face of women everywhere. Women have to adjust to this new reality. No, they don't, because it's not reality. It's fantasy. And the NDP voter is sick and tired of this nonsense being thrown in their face. And I believe a lot of that NDP vote, that populist NDP vote, is going to the opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre in the Conservative Party of Canada, and Maxime Bernier, the leader of the People's Party of Canada, because they're sick of these slogans and they're sick of social reengineering. And believe me, the times are a-changing that way. And you're going to see that evidence in the next election. A lot of those NDP voters, I think, showed up for the Freedom Convoy. They were populist types who were sick of the Ottawa elites controlling how Canada is run. And I think it's very important that we recognize this. So Trudeau has no good reason to assume he's going to win that next election. I know he survived them in the past. He survived the blackface scandal in the middle of an election. He couldn't even remember how many videos were produced. He somehow survived the SNC-Lavalin scandal. He lost an attorney general over that. But Trudeau marched on. But the Teflon is wearing very thin. The Teflon is wearing very thin, my friends. And he's not going to survive this next election. I tell you that because people don't forget everything. And these hijinks, these shenanigans of his when he's overseas in India, preening before the cameras in traditional Indian garb. Hey, I thought that was cultural appropriation, Mr. Trudeau. Not when you do it or your family does it. I don't think the family looked very uncomfortable, by the way, because this is all about Trudeau's ego. It's all driven by Trudeau's ego. And what about Trudeau overseas on the eve of Queen Elizabeth II's funeral? Well, what Queen meant to him was a 1970s band, and he decided to relax in a piano bar and serenade whomever was there with Bohemian Rhapsody. Somebody was there with a smartphone, recorded it all, and shot it around the world. And of course, Trudeau blasé as ever. But these things are going to come back to haunt Trudeau in the next election, as is his acquiescence, his surrender to China, his refusal to say that the extermination of the Uyghurs in China is not a genocide. He hasn't got the courage or the guts to call it what it is. And it's a genocide, because the Chinese masters would object to that. But Justin Trudeau thinks he's going to win this next election, but he's going to be very sadly mistaken. And one of the reasons Trudeau thinks he's going to win this next election is because he has the media in his pocket. The CBC is subsidized to the tune of $1.6 billion. It is a government state agency. Trudeau went one step further as prime minister. He's doled out $600 million to subsidize the mainstream media, the legacy media, those media outlets that are willing to accept taxpayer-funded subsidies, handouts in the operation of the news. I'm proud to say that the Western Standard is not one of those media outlets. We do not accept a cent, not a red nickel, of taxpayer funding as we conduct our business of collecting, gathering, and distributing the news. We are committed to telling you the truth. We're not like those mealy-mouthed reporters at those news conferences where Trudeau and the PMO selects the journalists who are allowed to ask the questions, and they ask those softball questions about, how did you decide to wear those socks today, Mr. Trudeau? No, we're not part of that group. We are part of the group that George Orwell was fighting for in his books and in his writings. Dedication, devotion to the truth. And that's why I'm here every week as part of this broadcast. Ottawa Exposed will continue to expose what's going on in Ottawa in 2023. If there's an election, I'm going to be there on the ground every day telling you what's happening with the lead players. What is Trudeau saying today? What's he doing this week? I want to encourage you before I leave you today to subscribe to the Western Standard. Log in at www.westernstandard.news and subscribe. We are part of the new media that's not part of Trudeau's legacy media. We are part of the new media. Make that a New Year's commitment. Make that a New Year's resolution to subscribe to the Western Standard, to be a part of this experience of the new media. Now, I want to bid you goodbye. Thank you again for your tremendous support. We're going to climb ever upward and ever forward, telling you the truth every week. God bless you for this week. I want to thank you again, and we'll see you next week.
The current Lethbridge feed grain prices are as follows. Cash barley's at $4.43, feed wheat's at $4.45, and corn's holding at $4.44 per metric ton. In the milling wheat markets, March Minneapolis futures gained 2 cents at $9.05 per bushel, with local hard red spring bids for January-February movement at $11.55 per bushel. In the oil seeds, nearby canola futures lost $2.70 at $8.6630 per ton, with delivered values for February movement at $19.42 per bushel. In the pulse markets, nearby red lentil prices are trading at 32.5 cents per pound, and yellow peas remain at $13 per bushel. In the cattle markets, February live cattle are down 17 cents at $157.10 per 100 weight. For more information on grain marketing, call me at 403-394-1711. I'm Sean Smith at Marketplace Commodities. Let's go Team Canada Juniors.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny.
It takes work to run this place. For my mental wellness, I try to exercise more days than I don't. Now, my husband is joining us too, and we've all seen the difference. And if I need more support, I call 211.
You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99